Welcome to Kingdom Builders Ministry, where we all are taking the gospel of Jesus Christ to the marketplace, one spiritual day at a time. I am Leonard Lewis Butler, and thank you for being here with us on today's broadcast. Listen, right now, people are making decisions, and I'm speaking of the frontline workers who are in the healthcare industry who are refusing to take the vaccination. You know, we recently did a study on Henry Aaron and how he took the vaccination and he later came to his passing. And there's been other people that has made it into the news that has taken the vaccination and they are no longer living. And the frontline workers, many of them are rejecting taking the vaccination. And the reason, and it's not clear why they're rejecting it, but I think the demographics can give you an idea and we can surmise what the answer is. Because when you deal with it from a racial barrier, the numbers that I found was that 70% in the black community has decided that they're not going to take it. And the responses are, we're going to wait, we're going to look at it, it was rolled out too fast, there's not enough information, and so they're saying that it was too quick. Let's just observe and see how it's going to be. And so based on that, I'm not taking it. And this is the front line. This is the medical community. I'm not in the medical community, but I'm observing. I have medical journals. I study that. So from that perspective, maybe I am. I'm not I play a cop on TV or I play a doctor on TV, all right? So when it comes to the medical community, I'm like that, all right? But I do study it. I do observe. And so this area fascinates me, especially when you're in the area of praying for people and healings and getting breakthroughs and moving in the areas of miracles. You want to get that kind of revelation and understanding what's going on so you can have authority in that area there. So in this area, there is a concern. When you deal with the whole nation, it's about 30%. 30% that's saying, I'm not taking it. Now, those two numbers are real interesting. 70% in the black community, 30% everybody else combined. And if being that that's the numbers that they're giving us, and sometimes the mathematics that they do when it comes to numbers is not how we would do it. And sometimes those numbers are done in an agenda type performance to whereas the true numbers, the true data is not going to come out how it should come out for whatever the reason may be. And we have a history of that in our mathematics. We have a history of that when it comes to dealing with the deficit and all, or how much money the nation has. They fix the math, the unemployment. They fix the math in such a way to where they say, oh, the unemployment is low or it's high. But if you got the raw numbers, you'll see that it's really bad or it's really good. So it's kind of interesting how our statisticians have the numbers manipulated for whatever their purpose is. And so in that, I think that in those that are observing who don't want to take the vaccination, for somehow they are accounting for all of that. They're saying, yeah, I hear what you're saying. And the thing about hearing what they're saying, here's some statements that I've heard, and I've heard it with people in the streets, and I've heard it in the news media. I haven't heard it much lately, but the statement has been this. The virus has come in and it's hit the black community very hard. It's hit the black community very hard. And they say the reason for that is because black skin does not do well with vitamin D. But now, that statement hitting the black community hard, the accuracy of that fits only in America. It doesn't fit in the Caribbean that way, other than the Dominican Republic. I think they've gotten hit pretty good. But places like Haiti, which is extremely poor, their numbers are like 400 or something like that overall, whereas we're in the millions, right? Places in Africa, where they're very poor, numbers are like less than 100. of people dying, all right? But everywhere else, it's crazy. And so those who are paying attention and who are studying it, which will be the frontline workers, something smells kind of funny when you're looking at those who are told that they're the hardest hit, that's saying, I don't want it, and those who are told that you're not the hardest hit and who are running to take it. Something seems strange there. And what we do, we observe, we study, we pay attention, we put the spirit on it, we get discernment through this to get a better understanding of what's really happening. And so when we deal with our frontline workers, for my heart is to pray for them, to pray for their protection, to pray for their boldness. Because one of the fears that the believers have, and this is kind of interesting too, is that I wonder what the statistics say for those who are believers that's saying, I'm not taking it. Because there's a large number of pastors that are saying, I recommend that you do take it, which that's interesting. See, I believe in the gospel. I believe in signs, wonders, miracles. And you've heard me say that I walk in that. And so I have a different approach. Now that's me. Now, I'm not going to say that for you because you have to make that decision for yourself. But when you have those who are leaders, they should have the same mindset that I have. And if they don't, I'm going to tell you now, it don't appear to me that they are truly, in the eyes of God, qualified to represent the gospel. Because it should be, look, let it be your faith. I'm not going to recommend. Just like when it comes to politics. See, this is very close to politics because when you're a pastor, you're not supposed to take sides when it comes to an election. So if that's understood, it should be in you some kind of way when it's coming to take sides of the vaccination. You bring out the proof, you bring out the prayer, and you show that you have results in your prayer for people that have it to say, hey, I'm recommending that you don't. Because we're seeing that people are getting healed, especially those that have big ministries. But yet, because there's no evidence, these people are moving in idle words, and the word of God says you will be judged by idle words. So if your words are idle, which idle is going to bring to a place of destruction, and people are giving up their authority to listen to you and follow what you're saying, and if this doesn't work out, just like we said, there are people allegedly that have died potentially of the vaccination, even though when the pharmaceutical companies who put it out said, well, we ran tests, and from what we've seen, it doesn't have anything to do with us, but it has everything to do with natural causes. But there's an underlying statement about those pharmaceutical companies that if something does happen, they cannot be sued. So actually, they have nothing to lose, and actually what they're saying, legally, they have a right to say it, even though it may not be true. Because if it's not being true, they're not going to be held accountable. But we who are believers are going to be held accountable because we know it by our God. So you have to make a decision in this area because this is real talk time. This is the time of the truth. This is the time of boldness. We're going to have to decide, are we going to promote a vaccination or we're going to speak, we trust in God and we're going to expect to have miracles. See, I speak of this guy from time to time. His name is Jack Coe. And he was a believer during the 1950s, okay? And he was put on trial by the medical community because of miracles happening in his ministry. He would get the doctor's patients, he would pray for them, and these people will become healed. So the doctors say, well, wait a minute. This man is obviously practicing medicine. Because no, he's not praying and seeing the results. He's practicing medicine. So they put him on trial. And when he went on trial, he was able to verify and prove by getting sick people into the courtroom, praying for them in front of the judge, the jury, and the prosecutors. And guess what? The healings were occurring in the courtroom. That case had to be rested. He wrote a book on that. Imagine, he was put on trial for the breakthroughs that were coming in that hour. So with that being understood, you would think that we would have had a movement of an investigation or a movement of funding to go after that area because there's healing in the land. There is a healing place within believers, whereas we can get them to teach, we can put money behind them, we can have an expansion to whereas there is a utopia of healing in America. That means we wouldn't have any heart disease. That means we wouldn't have mental illness. That means we wouldn't have people who have issues with Agent Orange coming out of the military, post-traumatic syndrome, bipolar, all those areas based on what happened in that time at that very moment. Doctors saw signs and wonders happening. It should have been a movement and it wasn't. It was as though society was saying, give us Barabbas. Give us the sinner. Give us the filth. When the purity, the holiness, people being healed, people being satisfied was in the land, was in the atmosphere. See, a believer would have said it like this: God was in this place and I didn't know it. But what about those that are not searching? They're easily swayed, and they're swayed to do something that our Heavenly Father is like, look, that's not for you. How many people are looking at that and saying this and have confidence that there is no need for them to go the route that the herd is telling us to do? This is real. Decisions have to be made. Protection has to be made. Because if you're making a decision out of fear, you're bringing calamity to your household. Many people say, I trust science. And we're finding out some that has done so have died. Now, granted, you got such a thing called protection and damage control, right? And so in that damage control, we may not get the true data on how many people have had issues. One of the stories of a reporter, it was mentioned that a friend of her son had taken a vaccination because his job recommended that he did so if he wanted to keep his job. So he took it. And for him, he could not work for 2 weeks. His parents had to come get him from his apartment, bring him to their house. They had to feed him. He was completely paralyzed and shut down. Couldn't go to work. What is that? And what we're told from the medical community, the benefits or the symptoms outweigh the risk. So the risk of having COVID, which is a flu type thing, and if you're young and healthy as this man is, your body could fight it off, more than likely could get it. The problem is the contagiousness got it. But here, he took the vaccination and his body completely shut down. And because there are shellfish in it, that's something that I read, don't know the accuracies of that, but how many people that you know that have an allergic reaction to shellfish? How many people that you know that for biblical dietary laws do not eat shellfish? But yet, that could be in the vaccination. Now, for me personally, if that is the case, that tells me, believers, that my Father is not in it. He's not going to settle. He says that he's the only one to be worshipped. And if he's the only one to be worshipped, then if you pull back and look at it, we could see that many, without realizing it, are worshiping the vaccine. Many. And all I want to do is just bring awareness. awareness on how to think, awareness on how to look at this, awareness of recognizing the situation that we're in. Now, I'm saying to you, and I've said this to you before, and those that follow us closely know that, and we've had it recorded based on people who have called in and asked for prayer, that they received breakthrough from whereas they had COVID symptoms and the symptoms left instantly. In one particular lady, we only have the testimony with her. She wasn't online, but we spoke with her, my wife and I. She had COVID. Doctor said she had COVID. She felt better. Symptoms left her when we prayed with her, talked with her. And she said that from that moment, she was fine. She had no more symptoms. It was very easy to go forth with. She went and got checked by the doctor, and the COVID was not there anymore. And so we're in a situation now, whereas we can see that there's a dividing line, and that dividing line is those on the vaccination side and those that are not on the vaccination side. There's the wheat and the tares there. We got those that are saying, look, it's not enough. I'm not trusting. There's been situations whereas we as a culture who are old enough have seen things like this, and it didn't work well for our people. And the question is, what's the difference? Now, some folks will look at what I'm saying, well, how can you not trust the government? How can you not trust the nation? How can you not trust the country? Well, we have evidence of it. And then we have evidence to see, when you talk about trust, you have people that went to Washington, the insurgents, and it's obvious that they didn't trust because they walked into the Capitol, many got arrested. So that tells you too that there is a trust issue in our society, because why did they do that? Trust challenges. Let's just call it out, call it for what it is. So we have trust issues across the aisle, trust issues. And we need to have some help. We need to have it proven. So when you rush it out there, speaking of the vaccination, and it's rushed out there, and then we have concerns where people are dying right after they've taken it, people are passing out, people are saying how hard it's hitting them, and we're not getting the true data after the fact because it's being whispered out, whereas people are sharing their personal stories and they're putting it out there. How do we deal with that? And I'm saying, how do we deal with it? Because many people don't have the insight. Many people don't have the answers. Many people are flowing in what's being given to them from the medical community, not able to understand how to do your own research. Many of us will hear that, do your own research, but some of us don't know day one what to do. If you haven't been involved, how all of a sudden you're going to change and shift and start to be involved? If you wasn't involved in 2019, in around November, December, of that COVID was on the way, and trying to understand what's going on and paying attention and saying, nah, I'm not getting caught up into that or whatever, it's going to be very hard to do your own research. You're going to have to listen to someone that has done the research, give up your authority to them, and hope they will do well by you. And that's the thing. The scriptures tell us to not put your trust in man. That's what the scriptures say to me. Don't put my trust in man. So if I don't have my trust in man, but my trust is in God, he will give me the insight. He'll give me the vision. He'll give you the vision. He'll give you the insight. He'll give us all that. And as he gives us all that, when we come to the place of where we are right now, we can look at the situation, we can discern it. And look, I ain't got to trust them. I can look at the situation and come up with the proper answer. I can come up with the outcome. I will be ministered to in privately or in the spirit, all right, to be able to understand how to work through this. I'll be given understanding of how to defeat the spirits that are behind it. Because another thing, that's another challenge there. You have spirits behind these things. Because when we deal with COVID, a part of our teaching is understanding the spirit that's behind COVID is the spirit of fear. The spirit of fear that goes after the weak. Because those that have underlying issues going after the weak. So being that it's the weak, and because we have a high rate of people that have weak autoimmune systems in our community due to dialysis and liver conditions, autoimmune system diseases, high blood pressure. It's common sense because of what has occurred in Italy. That community, not many blacks are there, but they got hit hard, that community. So really, it's not a black thing, it's a health thing. It's an autoimmune system thing. And it's going after that. And when you look at the obituaries, now this is interesting too. You look at the obituaries and you just scan through it. And this is what's really kind of scary for those that are not paying attention but believing the water cooler statements that's being put out there. And I'm calling this a water cooler statement, which is how they say that the black community is the hardest hit. And with that being said, if you look at the obituary, you might find maybe 1 out of 30, 1 out of 40 people of color that are in the obituary that died of COVID. The Boston Globe, the Los Angeles Times, did tributes to people that had died. And they went through the obituaries. And when you scan through those pictures, you're not going to find many people of color. So there's a problem right there. Here, we're concerned thinking that we're getting it and dying of it. And we're finding that the actual data is not giving us that kind of information. But yet, on the other side, whereas there's an alarming response from Caucasians that are getting COVID and that are coming to a place of death, and they're saying, why am I sick? And the nurses are like, you have COVID. And they're like, no, I don't have that. And in their minds, I say at first when I heard that, I wasn't sure what that was all about. But I came to the conclusion and realizing the reason it's hard for them to believe that they have it is because they were told by the medias, that it was people of color that was getting it. So now that it's at their door, it's like, nah, I don't have that. What I'm dying of? So it became a problem of how they were preached to, and it's made them turn the other cheek. Oh, I'm not wearing a mask. And so they become people of super spreaders and not protecting themselves. And then when you look at the raw data, for instance, here's a raw data statement. In the state of Florida, the numbers are going down in the black community. There's about 700,000 that has it in the white community and about 400,000 in the Hispanic community, all right? Or 600,000 to 800,000, about 400,000 Hispanic. And so they say the black community is going down. Why is it going down? Because of the fear factor, catch how I'm saying it now, of saying put your mask on, protect yourself, no Thanksgiving parties, no Christmas parties. Man, we've like shut down in our communities. And it's showing in those numbers, which is true numbers, because the lady that showed it, I don't remember the doctor's name or the scientist's name, but they sent the SWAT team to her home. They pulled guns on her children because she was showing the true numbers. They let her out, and they wanted to arrest her again because she had leaks that was giving her numbers, and she was putting it out, and they wanted to know how she was getting those numbers and putting them out, and she's just putting out the facts. And so they want to shut her down from bringing it out. So now we're getting this and we're starting to look at it and we're starting to investigate it a little bit closer, and we're realizing for how they were saying it to us at one time, it's not equaling that. And because it's not the truth, it's affecting people in a very bad way. Because if we understood that it can affect all people, or if it's heavy in a white community and it's not true, how many more people can be saved from this? I mean, you got people where families, guy had his father, his brother, his mother, all to die in a matter of weeks due to COVID. The father had COVID, but they wouldn't take him into the hospital. He came out, he was fine. When the mother died, when the brother died, the father had a heart attack and he died. And so this one guy got to bury his whole family. That's how hard this is. And so what could have been done? Maybe it could have been some area where it was careless, or who knows, whatever. But if we can put the truth out there, we can do better, other than trying to say this group is getting it. And so people are saying, well, they're getting it and not us. So it becomes a pride thing. There's no meekness in that. We're not being humble. And all of a sudden we're caught. Because I remember when it first came out, we used to say as a people, oh, we can't get that. And then all of a sudden, people were going into the hospital. Man, it was just bad. It was not understood. And even though they were going, what the news media was doing was pointing and saying, yeah, it's going to hit hard. And I get it, because when things like this happen, it goes to the poor communities. But what the challenge is that according to numbers, our folks make 13% of the population. And of that group, we do have a good bit that's poor. But when you do the whole scope of the nation, we're only a percentage of the poor. There's so much more. Now, granted, you could say per capita that we're getting it. And where the concern in question is, usually the masses that are getting hit is looked after. In this case, according to what I'm seeing on the news, they're not looking at the masses. They're looking at a minority and saying, oh, that minority group is getting hit. But when you look at the states where minorities are not at, those states are getting hit very hard. And we got to address that, look at it, so people can do well. People can be healed. Notice, as I add to that, you have 81,000 people this year during COVID, the COVID season, all right? 81,000 in 22 states. And I want to say 81 million, I tell you, but I got to look back at those numbers. But either way, the numbers is very high, that are dying of opioids. And the opioids is getting worse. They got a type of an opioid that's out there that they said is enough to make an elephant be tranquilized. Those are the numbers that are out there. Those are statements that are out there, and how bad it is. And because of the shutdown and because of how the environment is, people are going to those areas. More people are committing suicide. More abuse is going on. And this is an epidemic amongst the nation. Look, we are as weak as the weakest link. And if the challenges are being pointed to the weakest people, the way God deals with that, He brings a justice to the place. And whatever is weak, be careful. At some point, He'll make you weak to deal with the justice, to deal with the judgment. That's why being meek and humble through the process and understanding love and knowing that with His love, that spirit of fear is gone. With the blessing of peace, every miracle is needed through that assignment of peace. And He give us the gift of joy through this process. That's how serious times are right now. And when we do these type of messages, I always like to bring results. I always like to have answers. Check out our off the grid broadcasts when we bring those out. We go into the supernatural of it, such as a shrinking tumor and others that we've had where we talked about healing. That also with the diabetes, our studies on diabetes and our studies on cancers. And every time we talk about areas of healings, is not from what we've seen from some other ministry. It's what our Heavenly Father has done through the ministry that He has given us. So we're giving you true raw data of our experience in the signs and wonders. Thank you for joining us and being a part of our broadcast on today. I am Leonard Lewis Butler, and on behalf of my lovely wife, we love you all very much. But Jesus loves you way more than that. We'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye.